Hey everybody, welcome back to MazzaOnSports. It's Evan Mazza here. It's great to be back. Just here to recap today for the NFL action. We will talk today about the NFL Week 15. A lot to discuss, a lot to talk about with the postseason picture and where it's at right now after the weekend results. So we'll talk NFL. We'll talk the Mets after they make a pretty interesting signing over the weekend on Saturday. We'll discuss John Cena and WWE Saturday's main event. So we'll talk a little bit of wrestling and John Cena's last match, and we'll dive in a little. We'll talk a little bit about Monday Night Raw. Not really much to talk about, but we'll definitely talk about Saturday night's main event and John Cena and my little retrospective of his career. We'll talk obviously some Major League Baseball, some MLB news, and all that stuff. So obviously we got to talk about the NFL, and we'll go through every single game, starting with Thursday night action. Between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was a game that just told you everything about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what they are as a team. Kirk Cousins had not played well at all leading up to this game, and he goes out there and actually looks like prime Minnesota Vikings or even Washington Commanders Kirk Cousins. And the Buccaneers get a real tough loss. They blow a 14-point lead or so at halftime. In the second half from the fourth quarter. And I think that tells you everything about the Bucs. The Bucs are just an okay team that doesn't have enough on defense, and they're also injured. But this week was pretty interesting in the NFC South. The NFC South was not interesting, at least. The NFC South, it has its problems, but at least it is interesting. The teams in the bottom of the division won over the teams at the top of the division. We'll get to that game in a second, but the Bucs lose this game against the Falcons 29-28. Kirk Cousins and the Buccaneers defense again. I tell you, the thing about Todd Bowles, and I like Todd Bowles, his defenses are never particularly the best, and for a defensive coach, that's definitely not ideal. But Kirk Cousins goes off 30 of 44 for 3 touchdowns, 373 yards. Again, a throwback night for Kirk Cousins compared to Baker Mayfield. Not a decent game, 19 of 34, 277 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it was just the Bucs don't have enough on defense. They don't have enough to be a true contending team, and that's unfortunately what's holding the Bucs back. They can certainly win the division right now, especially too. But as far as going far in the playoffs, they're just not there. They're just not there yet. The Commanders beat the Giants 29-21, as the Commanders obviously have now shut down Jaden Daniels for the rest of the season. So Marcus Mariota, kind of an audition now for him to see how he can do. Maybe he can see how maybe he gets an opportunity to start somewhere else next season. But obviously Mariota goes out there, plays well. The Giants, again, having issues with protecting Jackson Dart, or also Jackson Dart protecting himself, to be more specific. Mariota, 10 of 19 for a touchdown. Jackson Dart, 20 of 36 for 2 touchdowns and a pick. Again, a pretty good performance by Jackson Dart, all things considering. But again, he's taking big hits, and the Giants don't really know, and he doesn't really protect himself. And Jameis Winston actually had to come in for a play. So it's just how it is right now with the Giants and the Commanders. But the Bills and the Patriots, next up. This is a tough loss for the Patriots. The New England Patriots, in a game where they really could have won the division and sealed the division up right there and had a 24-7 lead at halftime, blow it to the Bills at home, and Josh Allen goes off in the second half, and the Bills win the game 35-31. Absolutely brutal loss for the New England Patriots. Allen goes 19-28 for 3 touchdowns and only 193 yards, but 3 touchdowns. He rushes for 11 carries for 48 yards. Again, James Cook goes for 22 carries, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns, a couple of big touchdown runs from him. This is a really bad loss. Again, New England's still young, but I think this game shows you New England's not ready for a Super Bowl run. I know a lot of people are pegging the Patriots to maybe make a run of the Super Bowl, but this game, I think, tells you they're not ready yet. They're, again, second-year quarterback. Mike Vrabel is a good head coach, but he's, again, never been to a Super Bowl before. He did get to the championship game back in 2019, but still his first year on the team. The Patriots have problems on defense. Look, no one wants to say it, but the Patriots have problems on defense. They do. This is a team that gave up 100 yards rushing to the Jets and 100 yards rushing to the Bengals. And once again, they gave up 100-plus yards rushing to the Bills. And now they play the Ravens this Sunday, who can run the football and are coming off a pretty good performance running the football. And they got to go to Baltimore as the Ravens play a must-win game on Sunday night at M&T Bank Stadium, which is, and for all intents and purposes, will be the last home game of the season for the Ravens, barring if they win the division. So the crowd is going to be pumped up for that one. And Drake May will play a really good, now playing well, Ravens defense overall. But this is a really bad loss for New England. And now the Bills are back in this division race. They've now evened up the series with the Patriots. The Patriots now sit at 11-3, the Bills at 10-4. New England, like I said, they get Baltimore. They go to Baltimore this Sunday night to play the Ravens, and then they'll play the Jets and the Patriots. But I could see the Ravens beating despite the records, I could see the Ravens beating the Patriots here. Buffalo gets Cleveland, home against Philly, which will be tough, but I think they could beat the Eagles at home. If this was in Philly, I think the Bills would lose that game. The Eagles would win that game, but it's at home, and then they get the Jets. I could see the Bills winning all 3 games and the Patriots losing to the Ravens, which I think would give the division to the Bills. Because if the Bills were to finish with the same record as the Patriots, I think the Bills would win the division, I think. But that is a bad loss for the Patriots, especially when you have 24-7 with a chance to win this division and, really seal it right there. And they weren't able to. And I think it tells you everything you need to know about where the Patriots are at. They're a good football team. They're a good team. Mike Vrabel's done a very good job. Drake May has played really well this season. He's in the MVP conversation, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contending team right now. And I think it just also shows you how wide open the AFC is now, of course, and we'll get to them, the Kansas City Chiefs officially being missing the playoffs this year. Before we get to that game, the Bears beat the Browns 31-3. Not much to say. The Bears did what they had to do at home against a bad Browns team. Shedeur Sanders, I kind of figured would go into Chicago in a tough game against a good defense and struggle, and he did. He threw 3 interceptions in this game. The Bears went in there and won a game that they should win, and they did. So they went in there and they won. And with the injury to Micah Parsons on Saturday, that he suffered in Denver, his torn ACL injury for the Bears, now they go into Saturday night in Chicago against the Packers, pretty much with a chance to win this division right there. And with no Micah Parsons, that's really going to hurt Green Bay, and Chicago now has a chance to really win this division for the first time since 2018. Since 2018. But the Bears get a big win against the Browns. The Ravens beat the Bengals 24-0. Must-win game for the Ravens. I mean, every game is a must-win. The Ravens control their own destiny. They have to win out if they want to make the playoffs. And if you look at the playoff picture, we'll look at the playoff picture after we're done recapping the games. After we recap the games, but the Ravens essentially have to win out to make the playoffs. There's really no pathway for the Ravens. I mean, there is, but there isn't for them to make the playoffs via a wild card. If you look at the postseason picture right now, the Ravens have to win the division to get into the playoffs, and the only way they can do that is if they win out. So after that tough loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers last Sunday and that really bad loss to the Bengals on Thanksgiving, they really had to go into Cincinnati and win this game, and they did. It didn't get off to a great start overall. Offense looked slow again, but they got going. Lamar certainly looked the best he's looked since coming back from injury. I have a touchdown pass he threw to Zay Flowers to right before the halftime was maybe his best pass of the season. The defense pitched a shutout against a very good quarterback and a very good offense. The Ravens ran all over the Bengals defense and essentially did what they should have done on Thanksgiving. That's not a good Bengals defense. The Ravens should definitely score points and play and run the ball well and be effective, running on offense and balance offense against the Bengals defense isn't very good. Lamar only threw the ball 12 times, but the Ravens ran the ball but he threw 2 touchdowns and the Ravens ran the ball really well. And the defense was fantastic. The play of the game was, of course, Kyle Van Noy picking off Joe Burrow right by the goal line and handing it off to Gilman and running it in for a touchdown. And it immediately gave you flashbacks to Ed Reed pitching the ball, except instead of pitching it after an interception, he just handed it off to Gilman and said, hey, just go score a touchdown. So great play overall by Kyle Van Noy and Gilman, scoring a good win for the Ravens overall. And so they get a big win, 24-0. And now they come back home for their last home game of the regular season against the Patriots, against a good, tough Patriots team. But I think the Ravens can win that one. I really do. I think the Ravens can win this game. They need to win out to win this division. And obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers, they win their game. We'll talk about that. They won their game last night. They stay a game and a half ahead of the Ravens in the playoff, in the AFC North lead. So again, the Steelers are not letting up. That was a game that maybe you thought Pittsburgh could lose, but they didn't. And now Pittsburgh gets the Browns this Sunday. And then after that, they get Detroit. So let me just double check that. Let's see. Let me just double check the order of that. I'm pretty sure it's Browns and then Lions for the Steelers. No, excuse me. The Lions. The Steelers get the Lions first this Sunday. Then they get the Browns the following Sunday. So I don't see Pittsburgh beating Detroit this week. So, and I think the Ravens can beat New England. So you could see the two teams with the same records at the end of Sunday. But that's, of course, if the Ravens can come back home after a big win and follow up the shutout against the Bengals. The Ravens this has been that kind of year for the Ravens. They've been up and down. They play well, then they don't, and they play well, then they don't. You don't really know who they are as a team. They haven't really shown you the consistency this year as a team. I felt Sunday was the most complete win of the season, I think. But they have to be more consistent, show week in and week out, because they really haven't done that this season. So, I mean, they won 5 in a row, but then they lost 2 bad ones to the Bengals and then the Steelers. So they need to really, take this win. They really need to take this win they had against Cincy, carry it over to not just next week, but the week after and the week after. So let's see if they can do that, because they haven't really shown you that they could. They haven't really shown you that, but so let's see if they can. The Texans beat the Cardinals 40-20 as the Texans continue their push for the playoffs. They are playing tremendous football right now, and after that tough start they had, it's a testament to them and a testament to D'Amico Ryans. Chargers beat the Chiefs 16-13. They hang on to sweep the Chiefs. Sorry, hot water with lemon. They hang on to beat the Chiefs. They sweep the Chiefs. They beat them in Kansas City, and for the first time since 2014. And for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era, the Kansas City Chiefs will miss the playoffs. And to add insult to injury, the Kansas City Chiefs lose Patrick Mahomes for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. And I think they even said a torn PCL as well. They did say, I think, no real big major damage to his knee, which is good. So it looks like Mahomes should make a full speedy recovery and he'll be ready for next season. But it's just adds insult to what is. I know there's not many people obviously out there who will show pity to the Chiefs and everything with how dominant they've been. But for me, it's been just, you just look at, it's just been one of those tough years for the Chiefs. It's just one of those years. And you look at this, I was watching Monday Night Countdown and they're 1-7 this year in 1-score games compared to last year. They were 11-0. And, I know a lot of people said, well, the 1-score wins they had last year, that's not going to be the same as what I wasn't so sure about that, considering the Chiefs' history and how well they've been over the past, many years now. But it really did. It came back to kind of came back to, to the other side here, to the other end here, where they weren't able to win these close games. They weren't able to win these 1-score games. And 1-7 in 1-score games. And they have 8 losses. So that's what it took for the Chiefs to have a bad year, a tough year, and miss the playoffs, losing 1-score games. What does that tell you? But the Chiefs, I think now the Chiefs can have a full off season. This will be interesting. Now they have a full off season. They haven't had a full off season in years, because they've been either playing deep in the playoffs and the AFC Championship game, or they've been in the Super Bowls. So now they have a full off season to really just analyze the team, look at the team and just say, what are we missing here? Okay, now that we missed the playoffs, now that we have that, what do we really need to do to get back to being a good football, to playing good football, to being a good team again? What do we need to do? And you look at it, they need to improve the offensive line. They need to get a consistent running game. They need to get more big receivers for Mahomes. They're going to have to find out who is going to have to be the feature tight end next year, because it looks like Travis Kelce is going to retire. And even if he doesn't retire, I think they need to find another guy. Your defense, I think, is good, pretty darn good actually, but they need really consistent playmakers on the edge to help out Chris Jones. So there's a lot of things the Chiefs now can look at in the offseason now that they'll have a full offseason, like every other team that doesn't make the playoffs. So it's be interesting to see what the Chiefs do this year, because this is their tough year, right? This is the year that things didn't go their way. So, but the Chargers on the other end, they get a big win and they stay right at the top seed for the AFC. It doesn't look like they're going to win the division. Looks like Denver is going to win that division, but the Chargers continue to have another very good season under Jim Harbaugh, and they're able to sweep the Chiefs. Jaguars beat the Jets 48-20. What else can you say? This is a Jets team that is just not playing well defensively the last 2 weeks now. Just really embarrassing performances by the defense these last 2 weeks now against Miami, against Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence scored 6 touchdowns on Sunday. Brady Cook was Brady Cook. I mean, they had to start Brady Cook because of injuries. This was just, unfortunately, again, a second consecutive embarrassing performance by the Jets. And this is not what you want to see, obviously. I mean, I've credited the Jets and Aaron Glenn this year for battling and playing hard and being in most of these games. So it's really disheartening when you see, and tough to see, when you see these last 2 games and them playing as poorly as they did. I know the Miami Dolphins have got back into the postseason picture, and I know the Jaguars are a good football team, but I think you expect better. You expect the Jets to, at least battle. If you're going to lose, don't get blown out the way they've blown out now these last 2 weeks. And then you've had guys in the press, guys who are just refusing to talk to the media after the game. Again, this is what Aaron Glenn and Darren Moogie is going to have to fix. There's no accountability in this locker room. There's no real leadership in this locker room. There's no everyone holding themselves accountable. I know it's been a bad year. Again, I know it's been tough and frustrating. I know. But you know what? You got to just, when you lose a bad games like this, you just got to talk to the press and just kind of, be there for the team. That's all. For some of these players to just walk out and say, whatever. That's not. I understand you're frustrated, but you got to hold yourselves up to it. You got to represent the team, represent yourselves. And this is what, unfortunately, Aaron Glenn, Darren Moogie have to fix. They have to get leaders and set a culture and set a foundation for this team. And obviously, for the Jets, it's about where they're going to be in the draft and with their top several picks that they're going to have the next 2 years. But it'd be nice to see the Jets the next 3 games just battle, man. I mean, really, they play the Saints coming up next Sunday. I believe that's at the Superdome. Yes, it is. It's at the Superdome. The following week after that, on December 28th, they are home against the Patriots, and then the finale, they're at Buffalo, I believe. Are they home against Buffalo? Yeah, they're at Buffalo. Excuse me. They're at Buffalo to play the Bills. It'd be nice to see the Jets just go out there and play hard. I'm not expecting them to win at least 2 of those games, but can you at least go out there and just battle, like I've seen for the majority of the season? Speaking of a lack of battle and a lack of, toughness and lack of, battle and hard and everything, the Las Vegas Raiders go into Philadelphia. Kenny Pickett was starting a quarterback. They get completely dominated and shut out by the Philadelphia Eagles, 31-0. Not much to say other than that. The Eagles did what the Eagles bounced back after a couple of tough losses. They got a big win over just an atrociously bad football team. So nothing much to say other than that. Jalen Hurts looked good. He played well after a really bad game last week, where he threw 4 interceptions, I think, against the Chargers. Hurts went 12-15 for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, 22 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. They really need to get Saquon going now with these last couple of games into the playoffs. Jalen Hurts had 7 carries for 39 yards. Only Kenny Pickett against his old team only went 15-25 for 64 yards and a pick. This is a mess of a Raider team. The Raiders are a mess, and I don't think I think this is Pete Carroll's only season with the Raiders. So be interested to see what. So 49ers beat the Titans 37-24. Again, San Francisco continues to play really well. Tennessee just continues to be a team that is all Cam Ward and nothing else. They got a quarterback, Tennessee. They got a quarterback. Cam Ward had a pretty good day against a pretty good defense. I know they're injured, but he goes 18-29 for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. But San Francisco is just too much. They're a good team. They're just too much for Tennessee, but Tennessee needs a lot because Cam Ward's a pretty good quarterback. They got themselves a good one with Cam Ward. They just got to find some talent around them and get some guys. The Rams have another shootout against the Lions, and they were able to win this one 41-to-34. This was a tough one for the Lions, as they had the lead at halftime. 24-10, 24-17. But then again, the Rams just took off and were able to just kind of pull away with this game. Again, shows you that the Lions' problems, as good as they are, as talented as they are, they don't have enough on defense. They can score a bunch of points. They are so balanced on offense. Jared Goff had a great game, 3 touchdowns, 338 yards. But when they're balanced on offense and they're controlling the clock and controlling the game, that's when they're at their best and that's when they win. When they're involved in these high-scoring games and the offense has to play catch-up because the defense isn't stopping anybody, that's when they lose. And the Lions, again, look at the NFL postseason picture, but the Lions are on the outside looking in right now. And I think if you were looking at the league heading into the season, at this point, in December, you definitely would think the Lions would certainly be in the postseason picture. But right now, they're on the outside looking in. So, and that's a bit of a surprise. But that's also because, again, their defense just isn't good enough for them to go deep, unfortunately. They have a good offense, good balance. I like Goff, but they don't have enough on defense aside from guys like Aiden Hutchinson. The Seahawks and the Colts. This was an interesting game. The Seahawks win 18-16. Phillip Rivers makes his return to the NFL after almost 5 years away in retirement. 44 years old. I thought Rivers looked okay. Honestly, look, I can't, it's hard to grade and hard to assess with Rivers considering he was, again, 5 years out of retirement or almost 5 years. He's 44. This was a Colts team that needed a quarterback desperately. So they had connections with Rivers and they called him up, and Rivers has been working to come back over the last few years. It also shows you the lack of trust they have in Anthony Richardson, even though, they cleared him to play Anthony Richardson, but they just don't trust him. But they bring in Rivers. He just got there literally a few days ago. And I thought overall he did well. I really did. Again, nothing big or anything. He didn't it was a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of conservative, a lot of just kind of taking 1 yard at a time kind of stuff with Rivers. And honestly, he didn't really extend the field, didn't really throw deep at all. And look, I can understand that, obviously. But that's, the Colts are not really going to have Rivers, throw the ball 40, 35 times and have him throw 330 or something yards, but they're going to have, but the one thing Rivers can do is be smart with the ball and just get the ball into the playmakers. And I think that's all the Colts are really asking him to do, and hand the ball off, of course, to Jonathan Taylor. This was a tough task. Obviously, you're at Seattle against the Seahawks, tough defense, etc. That's why, to me, this game spoke to me more about the Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks got a huge game on Thursday night. They get the win on Sunday, 6 field goals by Myers. But they got a huge game on Thursday against the Rams in Seattle. Supposed to be, I think, really heavy rains, heading into that game. That's arguably the biggest game maybe of the entire season around the NFL. The Seahawks, if they're going to win this game on Thursday and then go deep into the playoffs, they really need to open up this offense. This offense is way too conservative. They can't really run the football. Their offensive line is okay at best. And Sam Darnold can look really good, but he's been making those turnover-prone mistakes as of late. I'm very curious if Mike McDonald fully trusts Sam Darnold. I don't know if he does. And if you're Seattle, you need to trust him. You need to. Your season rides on him. Your Super Bowl chances rides on him. The Seahawks are a really good team, and they have a chance to go to the Super Bowl this year. But if they're going to go to the Super Bowl, they need to open up the offense. That game on Sunday, I think, really was more about the Seahawks than anything else. Even though they won, I'm watching this team. I'm watching this game like this. You're facing a team that's playing a 44-year-old quarterback who hadn't played. Granted, it's Phillip Rivers. Granted, he's a future Hall of Famer. But this is a guy who had been away for 4 or 5 years in retirement. He's 44 years old. You should have dominated this game from the beginning, but you didn't. You kind of just slogged your way to a win. I don't know what to make of the Seahawks right now. And they're playing their biggest game of the season, biggest game in a long time. Certainly their biggest game since the years of Russell and Sherman and Lynch and Marshawn Lynch, and all those guys, and Bobby Wagner, when Pete Carroll was there in their primes, this is certainly the biggest game they played since those days, and they've made the playoff. Obviously, I say that with them making the playoffs a couple of years ago with Geno Smith, but just in the magnitude of this game coming up and where the Seahawks are in the playoff picture and trying to get the division win and maybe even getting the 1 seed or something like that, getting a home playoff game in Seattle. This is a team that really needs this win. And if you're going to win, you've got to open this up for Darnold. And you need to say, look, Sam, we paid you to go win these games. And for Darnold himself, he really needs this win on Thursday. He's had 3 big games where he needed to play well and win. And he did not just win. He didn't not win. It's not, he didn't just not win. He didn't play well at all. The Rams last year in the playoffs, the Lions before that, and the Rams this year. Sam Darnold really needs to have a good game. Sam Darnold really has to have a good game on Thursday. He really has to. And if I'm the Seahawks, and if you're the Seahawks, you're watching that film yesterday from Sunday's game, and you say, we won, but boy, oh boy, that could have been really embarrassing. That was pretty close to being a very embarrassing loss by the Seahawks. So they got a lot of work to do, Seattle. The NFC South, again, the Saints beat the Panthers 20-17. Missed opportunity for the Panthers. The Panthers, after the Bucks' bad loss to Atlanta, they had a chance to really take over first place here, and they didn't do it. Just a complete – it just completely emphasizes how wild the NFC South is. And now the NFC South between the Bucks and the Carolina Panthers will come down to really these last 2 games. It'll come down to really those 2 games against the Panthers team, between these 2 teams. The Bucks and the Panthers play each other this Sunday at Carolina. Then 2 weeks later, they play each other again in Tampa Bay. The Bucks in between that will play the Dolphins on the road, and in between that too, let me see who the Panthers play. In between that, the Panthers will actually play the Seahawks in Carolina. So Bucks kind of have the easier end here between the two. Bucks will get the Dolphins, Panthers will get the Seahawks in between those 2 matchups. But this was a game the Seahawks really needed to win and should have won, and they let one get away from them. And now the NFC South is back even, and the Bucks really should still be in the driver's seat. But we'll see who wins this division. Anybody who wins this division, I don't know, is winning a playoff game, even if they would have hosted. But now the Bucks now, I think, are back in the driver's seat to win the division after Carolina really had a bad loss on Sunday in a game they really should have won against New Orleans at New Orleans after Tampa Bay had that bad game against the Falcons. Bryce Young with 15-24 for $163 and a touchdown. Tyler Show, who's played pretty well for the Saints, 24-32, 272 and a touchdown. Tyler Show is, again, this will be interesting with the Saints. Tyler Show has had some pretty decent games for the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints are going to be a team that's going to have a top draft pick. Show is 1,484 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He started 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He has started how many games this year? How many games he started? Let's see. He started 1, 2, 3. He started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. He started 7 games. The Panthers have won. The Saints have won. Let's see. He started 7 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The Panthers have won 3 of them. The Saints have won 3 of them. Look, I'm not saying the Saints should trade down or pick somebody else in the draft because of Tyler Show. But Tyler Show is certainly saying, hey, I could be your starter next year. And trust me, if you're a team like the New York Jets, you're saying, hey, Saints, yeah, stick with Tyler Show as your quarterback. Stick with Tyler Show, please. But in all seriousness, look, good on Tyler Show. Like, he's playing well. Good for him. And he plays a pretty bad Jet defense this upcoming Sunday at home. So he has a chance to have another good game too. Broncos beat the Packers 34-26. Packers not only lose this game, but of course they lose Micah Parsons with a torn ACL. And that is just a really, really tough, bad loss for the Packers as they continue to battle for a playoff push and also try to win the division And now they got to face the Bears on Saturday night without Parsons. They then play the Ravens after that without Micah Parsons. So a really bad one for the Packers. Parsons had a really good year for them, 12 and a half sacks, 60 plus, I think, QB pressures. He's been an absolute beast for them, and to lose him for the rest of the season is tough. But the Broncos get a huge win, 34-26. Bo Nix played great, 4 touchdowns. He had, I think, three passing and 1 rushing, I believe. I think he had 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rush. 4 passing touchdowns as a whole. Bo Nix did. He was great against the Packers. Although there was some interesting fourth down play calls by Sean Payton. They did a fullback dive, I think, on 4th down when they didn't really have to, when the Packers had no timeouts, and the Packers got the ball back, and the Broncos defense bailed them out, bailed Sean Payton out. But if there's one thing about Denver that I'm looking at, is Sean Payton's play calling, even though he's won a Super Bowl, and also the Broncos offense and Bo Nix. Again, this was a great game for them, but they haven't had many games like that this year on offense. So if they can play like that heading into the playoffs, they can make a push. And playing at Denver, obviously, number 1 seed, if they can get it, is a very good advantage for them. But again, Bo was only a second-year quarterback. He's only in his second year. It's tough to see. Again, Russell Wilson won the Super Bowl his second year, yes. Ben Roethlisberger won the Super Bowl his second year, yes. And they both had great defenses when they did. Russell did in 2013. Ben did in 2005. Bo Nix has a great defense here with Denver, and they have a great pass rush. So the Broncos can make it to the Super Bowl, but it'll be interesting to see with the second-year quarterback and the way sometimes they are on offense, if they can make that push to the Super Bowl. They got a defense, and I like Bo, and they got a great defense, so they got that. Sunday Night Football was Sunday night. Yes, the Vikings, pretty big upset. They go to Dallas and they beat the Cowboys 34-26. JJ McCarthy has his best game so far of his young career, 15-24 for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. CJ Ham scores a touchdown. JJ McCarthy scored a rushing touchdown. That was his 3rd of the day. Dak Prescott had a pretty good day overall. Didn't throw any touchdown passes, but he had a pretty good day. It's just, again, the Dallas Cowboys, and this one. It's just, again, the Dallas Cowboys. Just you fight and they battle, they get back into it, and they're actually a pretty good story, with them being able to battle out and being able to rally. And then they have these 2 tough losses to Detroit, which you expect, obviously. Detroit should beat them, but they really should have beaten the Vikings here at home. Minnesota's out of it. You really should be able to beat the Vikings here, and they weren't able to. And again, just goes back to that defense. They made some improvements getting Quinnen Williams, but I like Quinnen Williams, but I don't know if he was enough for the Cowboys, to really offset some of their pass rushing woes, obviously, because they traded Micah Parsons. But again, that probably puts as the Cowboys are 6-7-1, that probably puts a bow on their season, and you kind of look at it and go, man, you can score a lot of points, but you don't really have much on defense. It's the same thing, obviously, with teams like the Bengals and such. Good offenses can score points, but you can't stop anybody. So, and that's the problem here. And they made J.J. McCarthy, who's struggled really all year long, they made him look pretty good on Sunday night. So a tough one for the Cowboys. Monday night, last night, Steelers pretty much dominate the Dolphins 20-15. Rodgers and the Steelers offense was balanced. Their defense got after Tua and made him uncomfortable. He throws a bad early interception in the first quarter. And the Steelers go on to win this game 28-15. And the Steelers remain a game and a half up on the Ravens in the AFC North. If you're Miami, again, on the road, in the cold, in December, even with all this momentum on your side, you go out there and you just lay an egg like that. It's just, again, this is where the Dolphins are. This is just who they've been for the last couple of years now under Mike McDaniels. And so, but Pittsburgh wins this game 28-15. We'll take a look at the postseason picture. With 3 games left to go, 3 weeks left to go before the beginning of the postseason in the NFC, the Rams have the number 1 seed right now. The Bears have the number 2 seed. The Eagles have the number 3 seed. The Rams at 11-3. Bears 2 seed on the 1 seed. The Bears 2 seed 10-4. Eagles 3 seed 9-5. Buccaneers 4 seed 7-7. They're back now leading the division. The Seahawks with the first wild card spot at 11-3. 49ers with the second wild card spot 10-4, and the Packers with the third wild card spot at 9-4-1 in the hunt. You still have the Cowboys with the 10 seed 6-7-1, but again, their playoff chances sit at 1%, so they're pretty much done. Carolina 7-7 with the 9 seed, current playoff probability 23%. Pretty much they have to win the division if they want to make the playoffs. And Detroit 8-6, outside looking in, they have a 40% chance to make the playoffs. Let me see. Do the Lions and Packers have one more game against each other? I actually don't think they do. The Lions, the rest of the season, get the Steelers. No, they don't. They get the Steelers at home, at the Vikings, at the Bears. Essentially, they have to win out if they want to at least get them a playoff spot. They have to win out. And it's at home and then on the road and on the road. So be tough for the Lions in the AFC, but it's amazing. They have the 8th seed now 3 weeks ago. And like I said, I don't think anybody thought that heading into the season. In the AFC, the number 1 seed is the Denver Broncos at 12-2. The Patriots with the 2 seed at 11-3 now. The Jaguars with the 3 seed at 10-4. The Steelers with the 4 seed, they lead the AFC North 8-6. The Chargers at the 5 seed with 10-4. They have the first wildcard spot, second wildcard spot now. The Bills 10-4. The Texans with the third wildcard spot, they are 9-5. There's only 2 teams. Only 2 teams are in the hunt. The Colts at 8-6. They have a 15% chance to make the playoffs. Obviously, with the Colts, it's tough for them. They're starting Rivers, 44, 45-year-old quarterback, off for 4 or 5 years of retirement. They have a really tough schedule remaining. They had that. They lost to Seattle. That was part of their tough schedule. And after that, they play the 49ers on Monday night at home. Then they're home against the Jaguars and then at Houston. I think they lose all 3 games to finish the season 8-9. And then, of course, there's the Ravens. Their only path, really, 40% chance to make the playoffs. They're 7-7 with the 9 seed. 40% chance to make the playoffs. Really, their only way in is to win the division and to win out and win the AFC North. That's really it. Unless Houston loses out. Well, then again, no, that doesn't matter anyway because the Ravens lost to Houston, so that doesn't matter. Even if the Texans were to lose out, let's see, Houston's 9-5. Yeah, even if the Texans were to lose, one more game or such, that doesn't matter. They have a win and they finish with the same record as the Ravens, and they're both say 9-8 or something like that. They're both 9-8. Doesn't matter. Houston would get that spot because they beat the Ravens earlier this season. So it really doesn't matter. The Ravens have to win the division. The Ravens have a loss over the Bills. They've already lost once to the Steelers. They play the Patriots this week. So pretty much, the Ravens have to win. They have to win out to make the playoffs. That's pretty much it. They have to win out and win the division. So the teams now that are out, obviously in the NFC is the Vikings, Falcons, Saints, Commanders, Cardinals, Giants. And the AFC, Chiefs are now out. Dolphins are now out. The Bengals are out. Jets, Browns, Raiders, and Titans. So, but that's the NFC playoff. That's the NFL playoff picture right now. It'll be interesting to see if anything changes. Obviously, we're looking at the NFC's number 1 seed. Is it still going to be the Rams? The Bears are still chasing after the Rams. The Broncos are holding on to the 1 seed. The Patriots are still trying to chase after them, although I think New England now is looking at still trying to hold the division title. And who's going to get certain divisions? Who's going to get the NFC South? Who's going to get the AFC North? The AFC South is still there. Jacksonville and Houston, they're only a game apart from each other. So, and I think, let me see, the Texans and the Jaguars, who won? I think the Texans won the first time. I think the Texans won the first matchup, or the Texans won I think the Texans and Jaguars split this year. Let's see. Texans won 36-29 on November 9th, and the Jaguars won September 21st. So, they split the series. it's going to be so. Yeah, they split each other. They're a game apart. The Jaguars and the Texans. So the AFC South is still there for anyone to win. The AFC North, of course, too, as well. The NFC North still, although I think it looks like Chicago is now going to win this division. So the NFC West, of course, with the Rams and the Seahawks. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. And the league is wide open. The league is really wide open this year. I don't know if there's any really great teams this year. The league is wide open, not in each conference. The NFC is tougher than the AFC, I think. The NFC is definitely better than the AFC, but this is a wide open NFL. It is wide open. There is no true great team. Anybody can win the Super Bowl this year, really. Anybody can win. Anybody can win the Super Bowl this year. So, but that's around the NFL so far. Just around, I guess we'll do a little rumors and news on stuff going around. The Bills signed kicker Michael Badgley. The Miami Dolphins, with them now being eliminated from the playoffs, they're now out. With the Miami Dolphins and then now being out, Mike McDaniel made some interesting comments about possibly benching Tua Tagovailoa. With them being out, I guess I could see them benching him. I mean, who else do they have? Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers. I guess they would go with Quinn Ewers. I guess they go with him. I mean, we already know what we're getting out of Zach Wilson. You might as well play Quinn Ewers. But yeah, very interesting comments about Tua Tagovailoa from their head coach Mike McDaniel. I'll read the comments here from McDaniel. This was earlier today after their loss. He said, QB play last night was not good enough. Everything is on the table when he was asked about a possible benching of Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, Tua leads. I think Tua and Geno Smith are leading the league in interceptions this year, and Geno didn't even play this Sunday. He didn't even play this past week. So it's been another disappointing. It's been a disappointing year for the Dolphins. They were able to make a season out of it at the very least. But overall, a very disappointing year for Miami. And just to go through where each team is in the draft, the NFL draft order, I don't know if Miami's going to be around the middle of the pack. Barring them really tanking and losing the last 3 games, which I don't think they will. They're not really in a position to take a quarterback unless really they trade up. Let me see. Their draft order right now is around the top 15-ish or so. Let me see. Their draft order right now is where is it? Their draft order right now, the Dolphins they're 13th. They're 13th right now, so they might have to trade up if they want to take a quarterback. So, but it looks like Tua Tagovailoa's days in Miami are done if he does get benched. And honestly, he's a guy that really should be coveted in the offseason. He's still young. He's got a good arm. He has put up good numbers in Miami. You could also say, well, that's because he's had good talent. And yeah, maybe. But you know what? If he didn't play well with them, I think that'd be an even bigger thing. But he did play well with them. And like I said, he's still young. So it's going to be interesting seeing 2 quarterbacks really this upcoming offseason with him, Tua, and Kyler Murray, who have both played well and have had good stretches where they've had good football. They are, I think both are Pro Bowlers, right? I think Tua has made a Pro Bowl in his career, but they both can put up good numbers. And both could be available. Both are still relatively young and still in their primes. Obviously, Tua's had Tua's had injuries with concussions, unfortunately. But let's see, was Tua? Yes, Tua was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. He led the league in passing 2 years ago. Was the passer rating leader in 2022. He led the league complete percentage last year. So look, these are 2 guys who have put up numbers and have done well overall in their careers. So haven't won a lot. Unfortunately, Tua's won more than Kyler Murray. He's made the playoffs a couple of times, at least in his career, but compared to Kyler's 1. But they'll be interesting to see with 2 quarterbacks who are still relatively young, still in their primes, can both have good arms and put up numbers and can move and are mobile. It'll be interesting to see where both Kyler and Tua Tagovailoa go this year. But the Jets released Adrian Martinez, so it looks like they're going to get back either Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod's going to start this week for the Jets. And the Jets, speaking of the Jets, released Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard was released. It just, again, didn't work out. It didn't work out. That's all I can really say. It didn't work out. Devontae Adams is week to week, so with a hamstring injury, so it looks like he will miss the big Thursday game against Seattle. That's a big one for the Rams. And Arch Manning, to no surprise, will return to school in Texas. That's no surprise. He should stay in Texas. He had a tough start to the year for Arch, but he overall finished the season well, and he had a good year. Be interested to see where Texas is coming into next year in terms of where they're ranked and everything. I think they could certainly be a better team than they were this past year. But their only bad loss was to Florida. They went to Ohio State and lost opening day. Okay. They went to opening night, they lost. Okay. Opening day, they lost. Okay. Then they went to Georgia and lost. Okay. They're really one bad loss was to Florida. Was at Florida in Gainesville. You get Arch Manning back, you get the team all regrouped up. I think they could be a lot better than they were this past year. But let's get to baseball now. The New York Mets, they signed Jorge Polanco. This was on Saturday. They signed Jorge Polanco, a switch hitting hitter from the Seattle Mariners. He's coming off a year where he hit 26 home runs, 64 runs scored, 78 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, an OPS of 821, OPS plus of 134, 326 OBP, 495 slugging, a 265 batting average, and 125 hits. The switch hitter will come to the Mets on a 2-year, $40 million contract. I don't know if he's the true replacement to Pete Alonso, but he's only played one game, I think, in first base. So I think mainly he's going to be the designated hitter. I think that's what the Mets want him to be. I think they want him to be just a DH. He's a switch hitter. When he's healthy, he can hit. He has had injury issues, but when he's healthy, he can hit. And he's got good power. He was good around the scoring position last year, and that was something the Mets really struggled with. Aside from the top couple of guys, the Mets really struggled last year running the scoring position. So if you can get a guy or two who can, or 3 or 4 or 5 who can hit run scoring position, that's great because they need to improve on that. So I think it's a good signing. Again, it's not a blowaway. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. What a signing. It's not that kind, but you know what? It's not that way, but you know what? The Mets don't need to make that kind of signing right now. They just need to sign players who will fit them, fit the mold, build chemistry, build a foundation, and just go out there and help them win baseball games. I think Polanco is a good deal. I think it's a good signing, and he can at least hit for them. I don't know if he's going to be their starting first baseman. Again, I'm sure he'll play some first base. Obviously, he won't play second and shortstop because that's Lindor and Marcus Semien, but I think he will I think he will mostly be the DH and maybe a couple of times at first, maybe a game or so at first base here and there. But I think he's going to be the everyday DH. But I think that's a good signing for the Mets. I like it for Polanco. But now the Mets obviously still need some things. They need to figure out where they're going to go with the bullpen. Obviously, there was a report a couple days ago about them talking to the Padres about Mason Miller. Getting Mason Miller would be some replacement for Edwin Diaz. The question is, are you willing to trade away Jonah Tong or Brandon Sproat for Mason Miller? Are you willing to trade a top-notch blue chip prospect starting pitcher when you really need starting pitching, for a one-inning closer? Look, if we already went through this, right? We already went through this a few years ago. Remember, 7 years ago with Brodie Van Wagenen, he traded Jarrett Kelenic, who everyone said, obviously Kelenic hasn't turned out to be the top prospect, guy a lot of people projected to be. But we had this conversation just 7 years ago, and he's an everyday player, Jarrett Kelenic, or at the time he was. We had this conversation before. Why are the Mets trading away a top prospect like Jarrett Kelenic for a one-inning closer, one-inning relief pitcher closer? Why would you do that? So we already went through this 7 years ago. I'd like to think that David Stearns is smarter than Brodie Van Wagenen. But then again, Edwin Diaz, I think the Mets, for all the criticisms they got, and the Robbie Cano didn't work out, but for all the criticisms the Mets got for that trade, safe to say they won that deal with Edwin Diaz compared to Jarrett Kelenic and how his career so far has been, unfortunately. But safe to say the Mets won that. Safe to say the Mets won that trade, even with Diaz leaving this offseason. But even still, would you trade Jonah Tong and a Brandon Sproat for a one-inning closer, relief pitcher, in Mason Miller? It's a question you have to ask. So. But getting Mason Miller certainly would be interesting. I think the Mets really need to be in the market. I know the Marlins probably wouldn't trade him, but they really need to be in the market for Esmeralda Cabrera and certainly the market for Mackenzie Gore if they want to get some starting pitching. The Mets obviously also today, Mark Feinsand was talking today on MLB Network. He said the Mets are, quote unquote, they're in on Kyle Tucker. And he said they're also very much in and heavily interested in Cody Bellinger. I think Tucker would be the best. Bellinger is interesting. Yeah, the Mets are very in. This is his direct quote. The Mets are very in on Cody Bellinger, and they are quote unquote looking at Kyle Tucker. I think Kyle Tucker is the better player. Certainly. The Mets like Bellinger for one reason. He's more versatile. He can play left field. He can play center field. He can play left field. He can play center field. He can play first base, DH. That's 4 spots, 4 places where you could put Cody Bellinger. Left field, center field, even right field. So 5. Left field, center field, right field, first base, DH. You put him in 5 different positions. 5 different spots. And obviously the Mets have a big hole in left field now. Brandon Nimmo traded. So Bellinger would make the most sense for the Mets in terms of versatility and positioning and need. But if we're talking BPA, best player available, well, that's Kyle Tucker. I know Bellinger's coming off a better year, but Tucker's the better player. So it'll be interesting. Again, I think the Mets certainly need to land one of them. With no Pete Alonso, with no Brandon Nimmo now, the Mets really need to land at least one of these guys. They need to sign at least one of them. I think Bellinger's going to go back to the Yankees. That's just my opinion. I think he's going back to the Yankees. I think the Yankees might pay heavy money to get him back. So, but it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see what happens there. I think the better player is Kyle Tucker. He is the best player available. The biggest need for the Mets, and probably the one that the Mets obviously like because of his versatility, would be Bellinger. But I'm not surprised to see the Mets, according to Feinsett, very much in on Cody Bellinger. Not surprised at all. He fits. He plays left. He plays the entire outfield. He play first base, and he'd be the DH. I'm not surprised. So, and the Mets need a left fielder. They need a first baseman. So, and like I said, so not surprised. But best player available to me is Kyle Tucker. Let's talk a little wrestling. We'll talk a little bit about Saturday Night's Main Event. I thought the show overall was pretty solid. The only thing I was very interested in seeing really was the finish to Obafemi and Cody Rhodes. I knew they weren't going to lose. I knew there was going to be no pinfall loss for either of them. They were going to have an interference from Drew McIntyre, so you knew that was going to be the case, which it did. McIntyre interfered and caused disqualification. So the match overall was good. I thought Bayley and Saul was good. I was surprised Saul went over. I thought the tag match was a good sprint. And then we get to Cena and Gunther. I thought it was a good match. I thought in the ring they told a good story. My only thing with it is that I wish we would have told this story about Gunther making Cena tap out and such. And Cena has never tapped out in 20 years, especially since he became the Hustle, Loyalty, Respect 17-time champion. That John Cena, face of wrestling, John Cena. I wish they would have given us more time to tell that story instead of just 7 or 8 days, or at least a week. But I think with the story they told here in this match was good. Obviously, it led to Gunther winning the match and making John Cena tap out, and that was his last match. So I think everything was. I think the match was good. I was okay with the finish, even though for me, I would have had Cena go over, and that's not just because it's not really because Cena should never tap out, should never give up, all that stuff, right? It's not even that. It's the fact that I think his retirement tour has been such a mixed bag, and he already lost at Survivor Series to Dom Mysterio. I think with the way his retirement tour had gone, at least how it'd been for a year, I think Cena should have at least won just to give the fans a happy ending because of how really poorly it was booked, or just at least a mixed bag. It was a tale of two halves, really, this whole retirement tour. And I think the fans showed it to them. When Triple H came out, I think they were also mostly booing the ending because they didn't want to see Cena lose. I think it was also them booing Cena's retirement tour as a whole, because it was just not really up to high expectations. But to the fans who had a problem with the finish, look, it is wrestling where most wrestlers, when they retire, they lose, right? There's only so few Trish Stratus where they win on their way out, or it's Sting where they win on their way out. It's mostly Ric Flair. It's mostly Ric Flair. I'm not counting Ric Flair's last match. Please don't remind me. But but it's mostly Ric Flair. It's mostly Shawn Michaels. I'm not counting when he came back 8 years later. Okay, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels. It's it's usually that's usually how it goes. Mick Foley. That's usually how it goes. John Cena. There's the select few, right? Trish Stratus, Sting, Undertaker, etc. But most of the time, wrestlers go out losing. They go out on their back, right? That's usually how it goes when they retire. But that's usually how it goes. Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson just recently. But this is how. But so Cena, I'm sure said, look, I'm putting over someone on my way out, and Gunther is the big thing. I think that's great. I think I'm totally okay with it. I think that's Cena giving back to the wrestling business he's been a part of for since 2000, 2001, 2002. So, so I think that's great. I think good on him. I just think the way it was booked, his retirement tour, the way it was booked, I think he should have won just to give the fans at least, and he already lost the Survivor Series. I think he should have given the fans, I think they should have given the fans at least one win here for him to go out. But then again, the point raises, what do you do with Gunther the next night? Because Cena ain't going to be there. So what do you do with Gunther after Cena loses? I saw Dave LaGreca, Busted Open Radio, suggest, I think it was yesterday, that Gunther should go away, and we don't see him again until the Rumble. The problem with that is Gunther had already been away. He just came back. So that wouldn't make much sense for him to go away again and then come back at the Rumble. So it wouldn't make much sense. But so it's a couple of different things. I think the match itself was good, and I thought the finish was good. I was okay with it. So, I thought the match was good, and I thought the goodbye to tributes to Cena was great after the show. I thought Punk and Cody coming out and giving the belts was cool. Cena's whole goodbye to the crowd I thought was cool. So, and that's it. That's John Cena's retirement tour. That was it. And that's the end of John Cena's, I guess full-time wrestling career, because I certainly think John Cena's coming back within another 5 to 10 years to wrestle again, because look, they always come back and wrestle. At least most of them do. But if Cena is retired for good and we won't see him again wrestling, he is going to be an ambassador for WWE for now. Look, it's one of the greatest wrestling careers of all time. I don't know if he's the GOAT, and obviously the company likes to throw in he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT. I don't know if he's the GOAT. That's all subjective. To me, the GOAT of WWE is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's the GOAT for me in the history of that company. If we're talking all professional wrestling, I don't know who is, but I definitely don't think it's John Cena. But for the short retrospective of John Cena's career, 23 plus years, becoming the biggest, that can't be easy. It wasn't easy, obviously, for John. Obviously, we know about the fact that he was going to get released, and it was Stephanie McMahon who heard him on the bus rap and say, hey, that's pretty good. And that eventually evolved into the Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick that launched him into stardom as a babyface, and then it eventually got him over, and eventually launched him into the Cena we saw from 2005 onwards. But it also is interesting because WWE in 2003 or 2004, 2005, we're in a very interesting period. It wasn't just ruthless aggression. It was post-Attitude Era. Rock was essentially gone. He was right there. He was essentially on his way to becoming a Hollywood star. Austin had to retire. Austin was another one who went out and retired losing to The Rock at WrestleMania until he came back, but still. But that was still 20 years later. But he had to retire due to neck injuries. Brock Lesnar in 2004 had left after WrestleMania to pursue an NFL career. So the company was in a very interesting flux period. They were in a very interesting flux period. That post-Attitude Era, they couldn't really find their number. They lost their top two stars. Of course, Mick Foley was essentially retired by then, although Foley was wrestling by 2004, putting over Randy Orton. But even still, he was really not a full-time guy anymore. And Triple H. So what did they have at that time? Well, Triple H was ruling Raw as the guy, as the world heavyweight champion, and not many people really enjoying his run. And because they thought it was boring, and it was pretty darn boring. SmackDown had a crop of guys that were waiting to break out. You had Kurt Angle and Undertaker and Big Show as like the main eventers. But then John Cena broke out. Brock Lesnar too, but then he leaves. John Cena though broke out. He was that guy who broke out from not just SmackDown but also Raw as well. He was the one that broke out, and he was the one that became the star that this company was looking for after Austin, after The Rock. He really did. And when Brock left, they still needed to find that guy. They were hoping to be Brock, but he left. Cena became that guy. He was the one that the baton was passed on to. And not only did he take the baton, he ran with it for almost 20 years. So his career is certainly, and it's not just him in the ring, but outside the ring. He was fantastic. So his career is certainly unlike anything we've ever really seen, not just in WWE, but really just in all of professional wrestling. I don't think he's the GOAT or anything like that, but he's definitely an all-time great. And he certainly had an incredible career in professional wrestling. And now he is taking the next step in Hollywood. He's now becoming a huge Hollywood star, and becoming, a big hit. So, and he's going to keep pursuing that. So, like I said, I could certainly see him back in the ring within the next 5 to 10 years, because it's wrestling. Wrestlers don't really stay retired forever. But in terms of his full in-ring career, his full-time career, even though he'd really been a part-timer still for the last few years, let's be real. He had been a part-timer really since 2000, 17, 18, 19, whatever. It does conclude the 23 years or so of his career. That is one of the greatest we've ever seen in professional wrestling. And he emerged at a time when the company really needed it after the Attitude Era and after Austin the Rock had both had to, Austin retired, Rock went to Hollywood, and Brock had left. So they really needed, and Triple H wasn't really doing well in Raw as the world champion. They needed someone to emerge, and they did. Batista also emerged as well, and so did Edge, but it was really John Cena who led the charge, and he led it into the next decade or so. So, it was certainly a career that is worth celebrating, but it is full of ups and downs. Obviously, there was a lot. Obviously, it's a two-way street with John Cena. He did that, revitalized, and brought people back, but he also lost a lot of fans because, of course, there was a lot of people that got sick and tired of him. He really is the epitome of wrestling, right, with wrestling fans, right? They loved John Cena. They propped him up. They loved him. They were so happy when he won the WWE Championship. And then by 2006, 2007, 2008, they hated him, and they were waiting for somebody else to pop up to take over his spot, right? And then 2014, and then 2015 comes along, and people started to love him because they were like, "Oh my God, John Cena can wrestle," because he's having these matches with the United States Championship. And then by 2000, 18, 19, whatever, people, he was universally beloved. All of a sudden, he went from beloved to hated back to universally beloved. To where he has stayed universally beloved to this day. So he's had a very fascinating career and a fascinating relationship with the audience. But I'll say this: he's always been popular, though. Even through all that, he's always been popular. And his thing was with obviously the young audience, and he had that for so many years. And he was overall the top merch seller, despite everything, despite the criticism with John Cena. People still paid to see him. And people still bought his shirts, and they bought the hats, and they bought everything because he was a big star. So Cena had a great. So Cena, congratulations to him on a really good career, on a great career. Certainly, I don't know if he's the GOAT, but certainly an all-time great. Not just WWE career, but certainly professional wrestling career. I don't know where he ranks in all professional wrestling, but he's definitely an all-time great, not just in WWE, but also professional wrestling as a whole. So. In terms of Monday Night Raw, not much to really talk about. I thought the promo with CM Punk was good, and then the build for Punk and Braun in a couple of weeks was good. Let's see. That's about it. The mask guy was Austin Theory. Crickets, I know. But it was Austin Theory, as we all thought it would be, but I didn't really care for it. Yeah, aside from that, the Punk Braun stuff I thought was good. Punk's promo was really good. I thought the segment at the end was good with Braun and Punk. Maxine Ivy Nile match was, I'm hoping Maxine gets better opponents and more of a storyline with, just to really solidify her as the Intercontinental Champion. I'm hoping they give her something, Didn't really. They were going to get Rhea versus Asuka next week after they did a segment with the Kabuki Warriors and Rhea and Io. We're going to get a match with Rhea and Asuka next week. We're getting a match with Bayley and Roxanne next week as well. Yeah, not really much. It was, again, the show itself, not really much happened aside from, Gunther's promo. I guess that's my one critique. My one main thing actually was Gunther's promo at the beginning of the show. Obviously, he started off the show bragging about winning the match on Saturday and saying, I made John Cena tap out like a little bitch, all that stuff, right? The thing is, it went too long. The segment really went way too long. And he repeated himself more than once, which I thought was not very smart. I think it should have been like Roman Reigns' promo after he beat The Undertaker WrestleMania 34. And when everyone thought Undertaker retired, well, he didn't. But if you all remember, obviously, it's honestly Roman Reigns' best promo, in my opinion. But Roman walks out there to the ring. He's showered in booze. And he says, actually, he does this. He's like, I got you in the palm of my hands. Something like that, right? And he's listening to the fans boo him. He's soaking it all in. Then he puts the microphone. He goes, it's my yard now. And he just walks away. It's the best promo of his entire career. And he says less than 5 words, or 5 words exactly. Excuse me. He says 5 words, and that was it. Gunther should have done the same thing. If I was booking it, he would have walked into the ring, soaked in the booze. I wouldn't say the booze were as loud for him as they were for Roman, but he should have soaked in all the booze, taken the mic and said, my time is now, walked away. I think that's it. But instead, he was like doing the braggadocious thing. He was rubbing into the fans. He was doing this. I think he did a You Can't See Me too as well. He said he was repeating himself a couple of times, the I made John Cena tap out, all that stuff, right? And then they extended the segment so they did that for, I think, longer than they should have. He went to the backstage segment. He was talking to a bunch of other wrestlers like Otis and Tozawa and Adam Pearce, who said, you're you need to leave the building now, whatever, you're done for the day, blah, blah, blah. Gunther's not caring. He's like, okay, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. he speaks to R-Truth, and He's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And interestingly, he then meets up with AJ Styles. Now, if you remember, AJ Styles' last year in professional wrestling will be next year. I don't know if I thought it was interesting that AJ Styles met up with him and they kind of teased with each other, because I think Gunther, as he's driving off, AJ Styles was right by Gunther's car, and Gunther goes into the car and he rolls down the window and he says, hey, AJ, you can't see me. So was that a tease for AJ and Gunther where Gunther retires AJ? Because AJ's last year is going to be next year in 2026. So it'll be interesting. I don't know. Man, was that a little tease? I don't know. That was interesting. That was probably the one interesting thing about the segment itself. I just thought it was too long. It was too winded. I felt Gunther should have said just that one thing, and that was it. Instead, he kept repeating himself. I get it. He's got a lot of heel heat right now. Obviously, if you saw that footage of him walking to the bus after Saturday's main event, it's Jesus, my goodness, it looked like it was 1970s and 80s all over again. But I think I would have kept it short and simple. I don't know if I would have dragged it on as much as they did, but they did, and I just think it should have been short. That's all. I think he just should have said those few words and then walked away, and he didn't have to do anything else. But they did. But so I think that was like really my big critique about last night's Raw. Other than that, not really much happened aside from the Punk promo and the ending segment. So we'll see. So that was Monday Night Raw. They filmed something for Cody and Drew. Yeah, they did the cinema film thing where Cody and Drew fought at Drew's house with Nick Aldis there. So we'll talk more on Friday night. We'll make our NFL predictions for the week's games, and also Saturday games, not just Thursday's big game between the Seahawks and the Rams. We'll recap that, but also preview Saturday's games and Sunday and Monday's games ending into the week as the NFL, we enter our last 3 weeks of the season. Any more Major League Baseball news going around? And we'll also talk about SmackDown after the show is over, and we'll talk about AEW Dynamite as a whole. So that'll be it for MazzaOnSports for today. I greatly appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. Give this video a like and share and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Have yourselves a great night, and we'll see you on Friday, and take care.